Structure of health. Now when you look at the structure of health, it is again the same. Okay, primary, secondary and tertiary. But when you look at the Indian structure of health, we basically separate your primary and club secondary and tertiary. Generally most of the people will not know the difference between secondary and tertiary. Now tertiary is more of a kind of a super specialty, or it's a kind of surgery where you demand and higher levels of medical attentions. Okay, your medical attention. Now when you look at this particular structure, each of the structure has a constraint. Each of the structure has a constraint. Right?
So even tertiary sector also has constraint.
Everything has a constraint. Now the constraints of health sector were exposed and testified by your COVID emergency. Now when you look at your primary sector, it is further divided, or the structure of primary sector is, the first one is sub-centers, primary healthcare centers, then community healthcare centers. Community healthcare centers. Okay. Now just keeping the structure in mind, now when you're supposed to discuss or when you're supposed to enlist the different issues of health sector or health structure, they can be generalized like this. They can be generalized like this. The first one is with respect to the funds. Then infra. When you talk about funding, it is only 1.5% of your GDP. Just the half of your education. Remember like this. The half of education 1.5. Education 3. As per NEP, they are going for double of it, 6. Right? And when you look at National Health Policy 2017, they anticipate for increasing it to 2.5%. So funding is an issue, infrastructure is an issue. Then apart from funding and infrastructure, now with respect to the doctors or the human resources. Now when you look at the doctors, it is 1:1648 ratio. The ratio is 1648, but the WHO suggests for 1:1000. That means there needs to be a doctor per 1000, which is suggested by your WHO. But when you look at the Indian doctor to population ratio, it is 1:1648. Now in the similar manner, as part of your HR, your nurses, talk about your nurses, the ratio is around 1:550. But as per your WHO, it suggests 1:400. Then quality of healthcare. Yes, quality of healthcare, especially with respect to greater prevalence of quacks, quack doctors, where they will not contain any professional medical degree, your RMP doctors. Issue of quality with respect to human resources, quality with respect to the technology used, quality with respect to the infrastructure that is present. Right? Now as part of your infrastructure, you need to even discuss about shortage. This was the main constraint, or this was the main reason behind the lockdown. Basically to revamp the infrastructural shortages or shortcomings or infrastructural deficits. Then next issue with respect to health is the insurance penetration with respect to health. The insurance penetration with respect to health. Insurance penetration with respect to health, there is around 34% only. That means out of 100, only 34% or 34 people have an insurance for health. That is the reason why here Ayushman Bharat. Yes. Then lack of health literacy. Now every mother is a doctor. Yes. She says, like, when you talk to her on phone, you say something, she'll say one tablet. Yes.
At least she's saying.
Huh?
At least there is someone to say to us.
That's okay.
Even
Health literacy. Now when you have this health literacy, when you talk about health literacy, there are hardly or there is any kind of awareness with respect to health. Now don't you think the lack or shortage of health literacy is the main reason for your antimicrobial resistance? Or the creation of superbugs with respect to usage of your antibiotics? This lack of health literacy or shortage of health literacy basically leads to the irrational usage of antibiotics. The next issue is lack of health data. Lack of health data or health data repository. That is the reason why Government of India has launched National Digital Health Mission, NDHM. NDHM. National Digital Health Mission, NDHM. NDHM. So shortage or absence of data or health profiling, we call it as health profiling. Or the other issue is epidemiological profiling. Epidemiological profiling. Epidemiological profiling. Then other issue with respect to the health is medical education. Medical education. Now medical education itself can be a topic. Cost or quality of rendering or quality of practice, quality of certification. These are multiple issues of health. Now it might be primary, secondary, tertiary, any kind of structure, you'll have these issues. Yes? Any other thing you want to add to these issues?
Sir, healthy food intake. Healthy food intake.
That is health literacy. Literacy.
Correct.
Ethical issues. Ethical issues.
Ethical practices, that is with respect to health education.
Extreme private hospitals.
Ethical
Out of pocket
custody of
expenses.
those who are giving treatments. I mean,
Medical health or medical ethics.
yes,
Medical ethics. Okay. You can include medical ethics. That is your Hippocratic oath. Imbibing by Hippocratic oath. No, it's an Hippocratic oath. Whatever oath they take is called as Hippocratic oath. It is not that hypocrisy. No, it is not HY. It is not HYPO. That is not that hypocrisy. This is HIPO. Hippocrates. Hippocrates is a thinker. Hippocratic oath.
Anyway, it's H5 also.
Connectivity.
Sometimes it's also H5.
Connectivity. How?
From villages they should come to cities.
Wow.
And also
Not
like
Infra.
tribal areas also they are carrying the dolly
Infra issues.
Out of pocket expenses.
That is your funding, low funding.
extreme costs in private hospitals.
Extreme costs in private hospitals.
Patient fees is 4,000.
Yes, sir. It is very high. Not only out of pocket expenditure, funding, low funding. Now when you have low governmental funding, it is very certain that you need to spend more. Yes. Unemployment.
Many doctors who have pursued a degree are not practicing.
That cannot be an issue. That is part of your medical education and quality of medical education. Right? These are certain issues. Now, what do you basically mean by epidemiological profile?
How to track diseases? How to track
Contact
people.
tracing is also.
Not contact tracing, basically the tracking of nature of changes in the diseases with respect to corresponding changes in the climatic conditions, with respect to corresponding changes in habitual changes, or with respect to your behavioral changes or dietary changes. Any kind of environmental change or climate change or dietary change or behavioral change or habitual change will lead to certain emergence of new diseases. For example, when you talk about the epidemiological transition, when you look at India case, it happened from communicable diseases to non-communicable diseases. The non-communicable diseases mostly centered around your lifestyle diseases. For example, your heart attack, cancer, ulcers, obesity. R&D, education only. Education, I told you, that is why it is a separate topic in itself. You can write R&D, no issues. Medical research, weak medical research ecosystem, you can write. Now, what are the solutions?
Digital health card.
Digital health card, okay.
Coming to the nurses. Development.
Proper training, strict regulations of
Yes, I think we'll see the measures looking at the issues only. Funds, as per national health policy, they are wanting it to increase to 2.5%. Now, this increasing expenditure on health would also reduce your out-of-pocket expenditure. We have said out-of-pocket expenditure is around 68%. Now, in order to tackle this issue of out-of-pocket expenditure, we basically need to go for increased expenditure from governmental side, which is 2.5%, which is envisaged in your NHP 2017. Then next is infrastructure. Improvement of infrastructure.
Sir, to add a point here, there is a news recently that government is thinking to add medical college to each and every district hospital.
Yes. Yes.
This will address that.
That will address the infrastructural issues.
Doctor.
Now, when you have automatically increased funding, don't you think this infrastructure is going to be addressed? This infrastructural issue is going to be addressed automatically when you have increased funding. Now, one of the aspects with respect to infrastructure is your national health mission, either your national rural health mission or your national urban health mission. Yes. Your national urban health mission, national rural health mission, your national health policy 2017.
national health policy.
2017. Then when it comes to your education, your national commission or your NCMC, national committee, or with respect to your medical education, NCMC or NMC bill, National Medical Council bill. You can say NMC bill, National Medical Council bill. National Medical Council bill. In the same manner, they can talk about accreditations. Accreditations with respect to college. What was the issue with respect to Fatima Medical College in AP? Did you all hear of the issue of Fatima Medical College? No? It was a big issue in AP. A lot of hue and cry happened because Fatima Medical College started running 3-4 batches at a time and it was not accredited.
What is meant by
Accreditation means
legal certification?
government certification.
Whether it's a college or not.
That it was not accredited. So then parents started. Now just imagine that fellow is in 3rd year of medicine and is not accredited. His doctor degree is going to be invalid. Now this they are coming to know after spending 3 years. Right? Now this doctors nurses issue with respect to human resources. We basically need to enhance the efficiency of your medical education, first thing. Then the necessary trainings have to be undertaken. Now even as per your NMC bill or National Medical Council, they have allowed for cross-disciplinary practices. That means an Ayurvedic doctor can suggest allopathic medicine or an homeopathic doctor can suggest an allopathic medicine. So they have allowed for cross-disciplinary practices. Now because of this cross-disciplinary practices, one thing would be is that they'll tackle this resource shortage, first thing. But the issue is they would lack specialization. And they would have necessary health repercussions on the individual whoever has approached this cross-disciplinary method of suggesting medicines.
They also said it will increase the number of quacks.
Yes, it will increase number of quacks. Very certain. Right? And with respect to this quality also, you need better accreditation, first thing. You need better training. And accreditation.
Sir, providing incentives to work in rural villages comes under doctors and nurses or
Yes, it can come under doctors. Because you have something called as ROTs. Sorry, it was ROP. It is not ROT. Rural outpost postings. That means for every college, for every medical college, you people are supposed to serve 6 months in the rural areas compulsorily. ROPs. So basically this kind of ROPs is to ensure that, in order to fill the vacancies or in order to fill that vacuum of human resource, they go for this ROP kind of things. Now when you talk about your insurance, basically you need to spread awareness about insurance. Yes. The first thing you're supposed to do is, you're supposed to spread awareness about insurance. Then apart from spreading awareness, you also need to incentivize for insurance or for insurance subscription, maybe at low premiums. That is the reason why here Ayushman Bharat or incentivizing the insurance subscription.
How to tackle the nexus between the doctors and hospitals? Like even when government is providing Ayushman Bharat for 5 lakhs per each person. So if at all it goes in wrong hands, into the purpose doesn't serve actually. Illegal billing or excessive billing.
That will be there. That will be anyway there. Now they have to look into regulatory mechanisms. Creation of National Health Regulatory Board, something like that. That will be in our way forward. Now health literacy, you need to basically talk about campaigns, health campaigns. For example, they have run something like Eat Right India by your FSSAI, Eat Right campaign. Then you need to create a national health repository or national health data repository, which is part of your national digital health mission. Something called as ENHR, Electronic National Health Records. National Health Records, ENHR, which is part of your national digital health mission.
Can we also add telemedicine at an very efficient?
Yeah. You can use technology is our way forward. Technology is our way forward. Now, other thing you can add is with respect to accessibility to drugs or medicines, or regulation of over the counter sale of the medicines. Regulation of over the counter sale of medicines. Because unless and until you regulate this over the counter sale of medicines, you cannot tackle the issue of antimicrobial resistance or creation of superbugs. Right? Now this is all about certain measures. Now when you look at way forward, now what will be the way forward? What will be the way forward? One is technology. One is technology. That is your telemedicine, your satellite technology, all this. Then I talked about something called as National Health Regulatory Board. National Health Regulatory Board. National Health Regulatory Board. Any other way forward for your health?
Indigenous production of medicines. Indigenous production of medicines.
Indigenous production, we have a very good generic drug market or generic drug production. In fact, we account for around 60% of the volume of generic drugs.
Are increasing production in APIs.
In APIs? APIs. Very good. Active pharmaceutical ingredients. APIs. Very good. Because when you look at APIs and when you look at drug production, we are around 70% importing from China. So in order to become self-sufficient, you can talk about the indigenous production or attaining self-sufficiency in active pharmaceutical ingredients. Right? That's it. So this is all about your health. Any doubts as of now?
So how to cater to the needs of the secondary hospitals? Like when we talk about primary healthcare, normal doctors can suffice.
Okay.
So how can we address that secondary issue?
Secondary, don't have a separate this thing with respect to your secondary issues or secondary sector or secondary healthcare system. We are mostly integrated with tertiary only.
That's the reason, like even for small things, people will go directly to the AIMS and big hospitals like Nizamabad Hospital. So why, like, if we create something within the secondary sector itself, secondary hospital, so I think people can access it.
One issue with respect to your secondary and tertiary sector is, or secondary and tertiary structure of your health is, you have greater prevalence of private sector. Now around 70% or 60 to 70% in your secondary and tertiary sector is by private sector. That is one big issue. That is One big issue.
So, like creating PPP model in the hospital.
Yeah, there is, here basically what is your Ayushman Bharat? It's a triple P model. It's a triple P model. You have certain M-paneled hospitals, and based on the treatment, they would reimburse up to your 5 lakhs.
I mean, even for infra also we can go.
Yes, they'll go. They are going anyways. Most of your district hospitals are being built on this triple P model only. Any doubts? Any doubts?
Obscurantism.
Obscurantism. What happened?
What does it mean?
What is the meaning of obscurantism? Now suppose I'll tell you one trick to understand the meanings of such things. Now suppose you have a statement. Now I think that particular statement was on the basis of superstitions. Superstitions masking the rational element of an human being. Now that is very clear. That is very clear. That means superstitions are going to impact the scientific temper, the impact the rationality, impact the humanism, impact the modernity element of a human brain. This is clear. Now you don't know what is obscurantism. For example, take an instance. You write the answer around this. And obscurantism will mostly mean something like that only. Check, open your internet and check. No, just check once. Sincerely telling, check once. Obscurantistic tendencies.
Deliberately preventing the false or full details of something from becoming unknown.
Then,
From becoming
do you need to know the meaning of obscurantism? Now in exam hall what will happen? అది చూసిన వెంటనే అలజడి. అరే అబ్స్క్యూరాంటిజం మనం ఎప్పుడు చదవలేదు. You don't need that.
Obscure means unclear, but obscurantism deliberately.
Obscurantism basically they are using it in the context of superstition. Now once you see the superstition, any word, any complex, you make Shashi Tharoor use any word instead of obscurantism also after superstition. That basically means it is masking your scientific temper, it is masking your rational element, it is masking your modernity in the human brain. That's it. When you know the concept of superstition, that it is going to kill the rational element in a human being, that is more than sufficient for you to answer. Now examiner, now most of the people, I mean, see at least don't you think there will be at least 10% or 15% of the people who are taking non-Hindi, non-English background? There will be Telugu people who will be writing in Telugu, Bengali, Marathi, Sindhi, all your 22 scheduled languages. Now do you think all of them should know the meaning of obscurantism? Or do you think examiner expects all of them to know the meaning of obscurantism? No. His intent of giving obscurantism is to eliminate people. Now in prelims also he does the same thing. He does the same thing. He gives some bombastic concept. Now by reading at the question, ఎటో వెళ్ళిపోయింది మనసు. But when you start reading the options, what basically happens is, it's a very similar or very simple concept that you have already read it somewhere. Now it's only that you have to hold your nerves when you are reading that word. That's it. It's all about temperament. It's all about temperament. It's all about temperament. Now I think for example, I'll tell you one example in GS2 this year. GS2 he has asked, compare the judiciary of United Kingdom and India. Now generally we look at comparison of judiciary of US and India. Generally. Because both of them, they have the concept of judicial review, judicial supremacy, all this. Independent judiciary. But out of nowhere he asked, Compare judiciary of
I think there are articles actually
United Kingdom.
regarding we removed some laws actually.
No. There was nothing related to that. The only common linkage between United Kingdom judiciary and Indian judiciary is in United Kingdom you have permanent judges. That means after they finish the tenure of the judges, they become part of their cabinet. They become part of their law making process. But in the case of India, your Justice former CJI Justice Ranjan Gogoi was appointed into Rajya Sabha or became the member of Rajya Sabha. That was the context of asking this question. Now the only common thing that is between your UK and Indian judiciary is rule of law. That's it. If you know 2 points, add masala 1.5 page. That's it. But I think we should not beat around the bush there. We should not beat around the bush. You should make the examiner understand that, Arey, my dear, I know these points. And only these are there in the world. You don't know anything else. Leave. You should make him understand that. That's why it is not answer writing, it is answer crafting. You have to craft your answers. Believe me, it's not a joke. You have to craft your answers. For such questions, you would hardly know 3 to 4 points at max, not more, at max. Suddenly in 2019, they had asked you to compare the secularistic features of French constitution and Indian constitution. Now it does not mean we sit and read all the constitutions in the world. Now we read our constitution, that is more than enough. So basically you are supposed to understand that France is not a complete secularistic country. Because the issue with respect to a particular Sikh individual wearing turban or a Muslim wearing an hijab is not allowed in France. So if you know this context, then you can write that answer. Now I would suggest you to take 15 minutes and revise all these social issues, Indian society. Whatever we discussed from past 4 days, I'll be here only. Now if you have any doubts, we'll finish. And within next, I think by 11:15 we'll start governance. Okay. Because these concepts, once you make them clear, I don't think you need to go and read also. Now basically it is governance. Governance. Now when you look at this concept of governance, now it becomes very relevant because I think we have already seen when I was discussing the introduction for your social security schemes. Now when you talk about governance, I said it is all about process of governing. It is all about process of ensuring an efficient governing mechanism. Now when you look at the efficient governing mechanism, now don't you think you are basically taking the services of the government closer to the public? Closer to the public in an efficient manner? Now don't you think the inherent mechanism of governance is having a bridging concept there? And that bridging concept of governance is in the form of civil servants, is in the form of civil society organizations, is in the form of NGOs, is in the form of SHGs, is in the form of voluntary organizations, is in the form of charitable institutions, is in the form of religious organizations. Now when you find this bridging concept has been taken into the hands of so many stakeholders, then the process of governance becomes very easy. Now when you are able to deliver or when you are able to ensure an efficient public service delivery, then it is what is called as governance mechanism. The governance is basically to look into the governing mechanism, or it is basically looking into the functioning of the government. It is basically looking into the functioning of the government. or it is looking into that kind of mode of public service delivery, or it is a process that basically tries to ensure efficiency, effectiveness in your public service delivery. Now, whatever kinds of steps that are to be taken to imbibe the qualities of efficiency and effectiveness in your public service delivery, that you are supposed to study in your governance. Now, governance, you are basically supposed to deal with the stakeholders of governance. You are supposed to deal with the tools of governance. You are supposed to deal with the principles of governance. Yes? You are supposed to deal with the stakeholders. For example, your government, your civil servants, your NGOs, your civil society organizations. Now, your tools of governance, for example, your Public Service Act, for example, your Citizen Charter, for example, your social audit, for example, your RTI, for example, your whistleblowing mechanisms, right? For example, the organizations like your CVC, CBI, CIC, all this. Now, what is happening here is you have multiple stakeholders being involved. You have multiple tools being involved in process of governance. Now, when you look at the multiple principles of governance, it is your efficiency, it is your effectiveness, it is the responsibility, answerability, accountability, transparency, public centricness, rule of law, participative. All these are principles of governance. Now, when you have multiple stakeholders, multiple tools, multiple principles in order to ensure an effective governance mechanism, you basically call it as a governing system. You call it as a governing system. It is called as a governing system because it has a structure. Any system, please remember, it will have a structure and it will have a function. Now, your governing system has a structure. Your governance system or governing system has a function also. Now, all these three, don't you think they form the structure of your governance? All these three, don't you think they form the structure of the governance? Now, what is the function of this governance system or function of this governance structure? Public service delivery. Effective public service. Now, when you look at this effective public service delivery, the only function of your governing system or governing mechanism is your public service delivery. Now, why is the sole function of your governing system or governing mechanism is your public service delivery? Why is it? Why is it so? Why is it so?
Like democracy itself is like government of the people, by the people and for the people.
Okay.
It's a people-centric one.
Okay.
So people are the main stakeholders, so people itself represent the public.
I'm looking for a better answer. I think we already discussed.
Why is it public service?
What is Article 38? What is Article 38? Welfare state. Welfare state. Yes. Now, in order to ensure the constitutional obligation, of ensuring a welfare state as per your Article 38 or as per your DPSP, then that is the reason why the sole function of governing system or mechanism is your public service delivery. Is this clear? Is this clear? Right? Now, as part of this governance session, We'll basically look into stakeholders, tools, and principles of governance. Now, if you're able to ensure the efficiency on this part, automatically the efficiency is on this part. Now, what are the challenges for your governance? What are the challenges? Now, this is a kind of input mechanism. This is a kind of input mechanism on who is processing all this input mechanism. It is your government. It's your governmental structure. It might be a union administration or state administration, which is basically processing all of these inputs. Now, your output is public service delivery. Now, tell me, what are the challenges?
Corruption.
Or what are the leakages? The leakages or challenges is your corruption, bureaucratic inertia, bureaucratic rigidity, bureaucratic rigidity. Then,
Bureaucratic apathy.
apathy, yes, bureaucratic apathy, bureaucratic inertia, bureaucratic rigidity, blind rationality, all these are pilferages or all these are losses. Politicization of public service. Politicization of public service.
Lack of funds.
Huh? Lack of?
Funds.
No, I'm talking about leakages.
Okay.
These are kinds of losses in the processing system of your governance.
Sir, departments, various departments.
You can talk about departmentalism. Very good. Departmentalism. Lack of convergence. Departmentalism or lack of convergence, coordination, and cooperation.
Cooperation.
Right? So the challenges for your governance is what? All these are your challenges. Right? So when you look at your governance as a system or governing system, we have certain sets of input in the form of tools, in the form of principles, in the form of stakeholders. Now we have a processing element, your government, your departments, your ministries, your ministers, your administration, your PMO, your cabinet secretary. All this is the processing element. Now the output is public service delivery. And in this process, the losses are your corruption, politicization of public service, bureaucratic inertia, bureaucratic apathy, bureaucratic rigidity, the concept or the phenomena of departmentalism. Right? Now, whole of your governance is this much. If you know this, then you can sleep peacefully. Because when I was talking about your social security mechanism, when I was talking about social security mechanisms, I said governance is all about the ensuring a greater level or greater magnitude or greater degree of implementation of your social security mechanisms. It is a mechanism or it is a system that is created with an objective of ensuring social justice. It is a mechanism or it is a system that is created in order to ensure a form of distributive justice. It is a mechanism that is created to ensure a form of retributive justice or redistributive justice, or your economic justice or your political justice or your social justice. So basically, in order to ensure the objective of social justice or social empowerment or social inclusion, or getting rid of your social issues or tackling the social issues, you need to have something called as principles of good governance. Principles of good governance. Now I'll give you one flow chart. Now please don't share it with your friends. Please. Right? This is completely my IPR. Okay. Huh? Video? That's why I told my IPR. Now in future if somebody claims copyrights over this, I'll sue them. I'll use this video on records. Huh? Just kidding, no issues. If I was supposed to be so selfish about this flowchart, I would not have given you people also. Just kidding. No, there should not be any kind of selfish attitude with respect to your teacher. Right? So when you talk about governance, now when you have the principles of governance being othered, then it will turn into good governance. When you imbibe this governance with the technology, it is going to turn into e-governance. And this e-governance is one of the mode of your good governance. Now, when you ensure a greater level of accountability, transparency, and ethical values, then this will turn into an ethical governance. Whole of your governance is summarized.
Accountability.
Transparency and ethical principles or ethical values. Is this clear? Now, one form of ethical governance is what is called as compassionate governance. One form of ethical governance is what is called as compassionate governance. So now take 2 minutes, just take 2 minutes and just retrace whatever I've spoken as an introductory session for your social sector schemes and try to correlate with whatever I've discussed now. Just take 2 minutes. Just take 2 minutes, I'll tell you why I'm doing this activity. Just take 2 minutes and correlate whatever we have discussed, the broader aspect or broader perspective of your social sector schemes and whatever broader aspects of governance we have discussed now. Are you able to interrelate something? Yes? What was the drawing you people have made?
Fitting few things in genre like adhering to good governance, we can see that ensuring the first basic structures, like basic needs to be fulfilled, like education, health, housing. When compared to the compassionate governance, we can go about furthermore like sanitary, clean fuel, elimination of poverty, social inclusion.
See, I'll tell you what is compassionate governance. I think the literal meaning of it, compassionate governance, is little different. So don't go by the literal meaning with respect to compassionate governance. Now, when you look at whatever I have spoken with respect to your social sector schemes and whatever I have spoken just now, don't you think the issues in your social sector schemes or the shortcomings are resultant of the pilferages or leakages of your government system? Yes? Yes? Yes or no? And don't you think the inputs that are to be given by your government system or to your government system, what you have seen in the form of stakeholders, in the form of tools, in the form of principles, don't you think they are going to become an antidote or they are going to become panacea for all the pilferages that are taking place with respect to your social sector schemes? For example, your social audit. Don't you think whatever kinds of corruption that is going on in your Manrega scheme can be restricted by social audit? Yes. Yes or no? Whatever kind of pilferages or whatever kind of nexus that is going on with respect to your education sector, don't you think you can restrict it with the application of RTI? Yes. Don't you think an NGO activism that is trying to promote the principles of good governance can hinder or can stop the process of the corruption that is involved in this education sector or health sector? Yes. So whatever inputs we have discussed with respect to a governance mechanism or with respect to a governance system, we find they are nothing but the panacea or the antidotes for the pilferages of your governance system. And the pilferages of governance system is nothing but the shortcomings of your social sector schemes. That is the interlinkage, or that is the reason why I have told you to just refer both. Is the linkage clear? The shortcomings of your social sector schemes are nothing but the manifestations of your pilferages in the governance system. Pilferages in the form of corruption, pilferages in the form of bureaucratic apathy, bureaucratic rigidity, bureaucratic inertia, red tapeism, or your departmentalism, lack of coordination, cooperation, convergence. And in order to reinforce all these inputs in the form of stakeholders, in the form of principles, in the form of tools, you not only or you need not only stick to your good governance, because your good governance can promote the aspect with respect to the tools and principles of governing system. But when it comes to the stakeholders of the governing system, it is not efficient or it is not sufficient for your good governance principles to be imbibed alone, but you have to take the help of technology in the form of e-governance. You have to take the help of your technology in the form of e-governance. Now, when you combine or when you intermingle or when you intermix the resultants of your e-governance and the resultants of your good governance, it is going to become and it is going to turn out to be an ethical governance. An ethical governance provided you take necessary civil services reforms. Ethical governance as a resultant of your good governance and as a resultant of e-governance is only possible provided you imbibe a regulatory framework with respect to the functioning of your NGOs, with respect to functioning of your civil society organizations. You basically construct the ethical fabric of all of these stakeholders. Then it will turn out into ethical governance. Now, ethical governance, you are supposed to remember that ethical governance is not about upholding only the governance principles like your accountability, transparency, responsibility, responsiveness, or efficiency, effectiveness. But you're also supposed to remember that ethical governance is all about governing system where it is balancing your principles of good governance, also your human values. When a governing system or when a governing mechanism is balancing your human values as well as your principles of good governance, then you call it as ethical governance. Ethical governance, because it has value of tolerance when you are imbibing your impartiality, or when you are imbibing your objectivity, when you are imbibing accountability, when you are imbibing transparency. It has objective of compassion, or it has a combination of compassion with accountability, or it has a combination of empathy with objectivity. Now, what do I basically mean by blind rationality is, although objectivity is a feature of good governance mechanism, but objectivity as just mere objectivity as part of your good governance mechanism is going to result in blind rationality. Because objectivity is all about making decisions on the basis of certain rules, on the basis of certain objective framework, on the basis of certain results, or it is a kind of informed decision making process. Now, as part of this informed decision making process by your bureaucracy, which is named as objectivity, what do? They just stick to the rules which are mentioned in your paper. Now, without any element of compassion, without any element of empathy, without any element of sympathy, or without any element of love, what they do? They are blindly rational to the whatever rules they see. No doubt this objectivity in itself will promote good governance, but it is not sufficient to promote ethical governance. Now, unless and until you combine or you intermix this feature of objectivity in your governance principles or in your good governance with empathy, then only it will promote ethical governance. Because at the end of the day, you are supposed to govern machines or human beings. You are supposed to govern human beings. Now, the inherent element or inherent speciality of human being is what? Human values. Or the market selling proposition of a human being is what? His human values. His love, compassion, truth. Now, what basically distinguishes an animal and a human being is his human values. Now, in order to ensure or imbibe these principles of human values into the governance mechanism, you need ethical governance. Now, one form of ethical governance is compassionate governance. Now, basically, what do you mean by compassionate governance is, you basically look into the welfare of the downtrodden section. You basically look into the welfare of the marginal sections. It is more of a mixture of empathy. It is more of a mixture of compassion. It is more of a mixture of love. It is more of a mixture of tolerance. It is more of a mixture of impartiality. It is more of a mixture of non-partisanship. Where you have all these elements being imbibed in the governance mechanism, then you can safely call it as compassionate governance. Now, in compassionate governance, there is no scope or there is no place left for your blind rationality. Now, for example, there is a scheduled tribe girl. She was not able to seed her Aadhaar for her PDS. Now, she did not have food for last 10 days. She did not have food for last 10 days and she goes to the ration shop with her ration card, which is not seeded with your Aadhaar. Then they deny ration because your Aadhaar or your ration is not seeded. And the girl dies. Starvation death of Jharkhand has shaken the country to such a magnitude where the people had to vocally talk about compassionate governance. Now, when you look at this instance of starvation death in Jharkhand, what happened? There were principles of good governance. They maintained what? Objectivity. They maintained rule of law. Yes. They stuck to rules. But that administration of that particular region, they failed to understand that it was blind rationality. Now, in order to avoid the repetition of such instances, you basically need to go for compassionate governance. Compassionate governance. Now, compassionate governance does not mean you imbibe the principles of empathy, you imbibe the principles of love, you imbibe the principles of sympathy into your governance mechanism at the cost of objectivity, at the cost of responsibility, at the cost of responsiveness, at the cost of efficiency, and at the cost of effectivity. That is not tolerated. You are supposed to remember that good governance, principles of good governance is just a necessary condition and it is not sufficient condition. For you to efficiently govern the subjects of your country, for you to efficiently realize the objective of welfare state which is mentioned in your Article 38, your good governance principles are just necessary condition, but they are not sufficient conditions. Now, in order to look into the holism of your governance mechanism, or in order to expand the comprehensivity of your governance mechanism, you basically need to meet even the sufficient conditions which are in the form of ethical values and human values. This is all about governance system. Now, just refer to your GS4 syllabus. There you will have topics like ethical governance, there you will have topics like accountability mechanisms. If you understand this, I bet you are going to write a beautiful answer there. Is this clear? Is this clear?
Sir, there's always a chance of discretion when it comes to compassionate governance.
That's why I said the necessary condition you have to meet is good governance principles. Yes. There is huge scope for discretion. That's why I said your ethical values or the principles of sympathy, empathy, compassion, love, all this, they are just an augmentative feature. In order to make whole of your governance mechanism comprehensive. Is this clear? Is this clear? Now just let's look at the certain terms with respect to your governance. Okay. Now there are certain principles of good governance. Principles of good governance. This is the mnemonic. Or let me make it a little more Pierre cut. This is more easy for you to remember, I think. Pierre cut. I remembered it as at creeper. Oh, this is Pierre cut. Your P is participative. Your E is efficiency. participative, efficiency, effectiveness, responsiveness, citizen centric, accountability, citizen centric, accountability, rule of law, and transparency. One is participative, effectiveness, efficiency, citizen responsiveness, citizen centric, answerability or accountability,
And
rule of law, and transparency. These are principles of good governance. Now, what are the challenges for governance or challenges for your governing system? If all of these principles are absent, don't you think these are the challenges? Or the factors that are impacting each of this thing, don't you think they are going to be a challenges to governance? What will impact your participative nature of governance? A centralized system. Yes. A centralized system is going to impact your participative nature. Now, what is going to impact your efficiency? Efficiency? Basically, lack of training or administrative aptitude. Administrative aptitude. Now, what is going to impact your effectiveness? What is going to impact your effectiveness? Domination.
political master.
Rigidity.
Politicization.
Politicization of public services. What is our responsive? What is going to impact your responsiveness? Lack of awareness.
I think here would be STD is your
No.
responsibility.
Responsiveness, you basically need to talk about that mechanism which is stirring up. Okay. Responsiveness, apart from rigidity, you can include with respect to that, you can talk about inertia also. Okay. So responsiveness on the side of the citizens, it is because of lack of awareness. Now, unless and until your citizen is aware, don't you think your system is going to be responsive? No. No. Lack of awareness. Then what is your C? Citizen centric. Citizen centric. What is going to impact?
So in the efficacy, can we say from caste-based politics to value-based politics?
We'll talk about solutions later on. These are challenges. Can I say citizen centric? Your corruption is going to impact your citizen centric nature. Corruption is going to impact your citizen centric nature. Then what is going to impact your accountability? Accountability and transparency. Lack of monitoring mechanism or lack of appraisal system. Lack of monitoring mechanism or lack of appraisal system. Right? For that case, you can even say discretion. What is this R? Rule of law. Rule of law. What is going to impact your rule of law?
Favoritism.
Favoritism, nepotism.
Discretion also comes in this.
Yes. Favoritism, nepotism.
Partition politics.
Favoritism, nepotism.
Blind rationality.
Blind rationality, I think it will impact your responsiveness. So from the principles of governance, we have got the challenges for governance. Yes? Yes or no? Now what is the solution for, what are the solutions?
Transparency.
Accountability and transparency, more or less similar.
Okay.
Now if you want to define accountability, you can say accountability equals to answerability plus responsibility. Accountability equals to answerability plus responsibility. Now your answerability turns into accountability only if you are responsible to whatever you have answered. Right? Accountability equals to answerability plus responsibility. Now what are the solutions for your mechanisms, or in order to ensure this, you basically need to go for certain tools of governance. You need to basically go for certain tools of governance. Now certain tools of governance, what are these tools? They are your RTA, social audit, citizen charter, social audit, citizen charter, then your Public Services Act, the regulatory mechanisms, then enlightened citizenry, then your civil society organizations. This is all about principles and challenges to governance. Now we'll see each of the tools of ensuring, or before that, I told you accountability is answerability plus responsibility. Now I think you know meanings of all of those 8 principles. Participative, transparency. Transparency is basically open for scrutiny. When you are open for scrutiny, that means you are transparent. Efficiency, effectiveness, responsiveness, citizen-centric, rule of law. I think all these are clear. Now when you look at accountability,
Citizen-centric in a second, like all the governance rules are based around citizens.
no, it has to be issue specific. That is what is meant by citizen-centric. You cannot have a uniform policy for all the sections of the society. Now if it is governing mechanism that is tackling the issues of scheduled castes, means please customize it as per their requirements. This is what is meant by citizen-centric. Now when you talk about accountability, this accountability can be of 2 types. One, either horizontal or vertical. Your accountability can be either horizontal or vertical. What do you basically mean by horizontal or vertical accountability? Can somebody tell?
Be between the institutions and
Hmm?
between the people and the institutions, among the institutions also. Among the institutions and between the people and the institutions.
Pardon, come again.
Between the institutions.
Which one?
Like horizontal.
Okay,
Between the institutions. And vertical between the institutions and the people.
very good, very precise. Very precise. Can you give examples?
Like or when we're talking about social audits of particular schemes,
Hmm.
so one institution will be auditing the welfare scheme of another organization. So there must be transparency.
No, just give the mechanism that is available.
Judiciary interpretation of legislative and executive.
Okay. Your basically judicial review is a form of
Accountability.
horizontal accountability. Then, any vertical accountability example?
RTAs and RTAs, CAC and CA.
No.
Higher
Your CIC is basically asking, or who is the adjudicating mechanism with respect to your RTI? Your CIC, Central Information Commission. Then,
district or high court judges are accountable to Supreme Court.
no. Think little basic.
Local government itself needs money.
Very good. Elections. I was just looking for it. Elections. Very good. Elections is a kind of vertical accountability. That means people are determining who is going to represent them. That means, don't you think they are inherently creating a kind of accountability mechanism, a kind of vertical accountability mechanism on them? Yes. Now, if there is any breach of this charter or silent charter that is being signed between your public and your political representative, then what is the consequence? Next term he is kicked out. So it is creating a kind of inherent vertical accountability mechanism. Now when you look at horizontal, I said it is between, for example, two institutions. A classic example for this is judicial review. Judicial review, or basically looking into the constitutional validity of certain laws. Your Article 13, Article 142. Right? Is this clear? So horizontal and vertical accountability. Now RTA is going to give you what kind of accountability? Horizontal. Your social audit? Vertical. Now we'll get into one of those, each of those things. We'll basically see what is the provisions with respect to them, or what is the impact, what are the challenges, and what more needs to be done. This will be the structure of Now when you look at the first tool of accountability, it is RTI. First tool of accountability is RTI. Now when you look at this RTI, there were a lot of NGOs which worked behind its manifestation. It was formed, or it was passed in the year 2005. RTI. Now, right to information was considered as a fundamental right under your Article 19, Clause 1. Article 19, Clause 1 in SP Gupta case. In SP Gupta case. And also in Raj Narayan case. And also in Raj Narayan case. Okay. One is SP Gupta and the other one is Raj Narayan case. Now basically you need to know certain provisions of RTI. Now when you look at RTI is applicable to only such body which is classified as public body. Which is classified as public body. Now the definition of public body is mentioned in your section 2. Section 2 of RTI Act. Section 2. Now we are supposed to know about section 4 also. Now under section 2 with respect to the definition of public body, it basically talks about even a substantial funding from government, or if a body receives a substantial funding from government, then it is also considered as a public body. Now one drawback with respect to this law is it does not define what do you basically mean by substantive funding. It uses the word substantive funding, but it does not quantify, or it does not say if you are being funded by this much amount, then it is substantive. So that ambiguity that is present with respect to the definition of public bodies is one of the drawbacks of RTI. That is the reason why still your political parties are not coming under the ambit of RTI, because when you look at the definition of public body, it is not clear and it is ambiguous with respect to the section 2. Point number 1.
Electoral bond section. Electoral bond.
And point number 2, that is with respect to section 4.
What is section 4?
I'll tell you. Now when you look at section 4, it basically talks about suo motu declaration. Suo motu declaration. Section 4 basically talks about suo motu declaration. Now what do you basically mean by suo motu declaration is any public authority can declare or can publicly disclose the information on its own. They can publicly disclose information on its own. But when you look at any of the public authority, hardly less than 10% of the people are aware about this suo motu declaration. So this section 4 where it talks about suo motu declaration by a public authority is not being used, or it is a silent provision in your RTI. Then the other thing you are supposed to remember is section 8. Section 8. Section 8 you are supposed to remember with respect to certain exceptions of RTI. Certain exceptions. Certain exceptions of RTI. Right? If you remember these 3 provisions, more than enough. Now please go and refer section 2D and section 2H. Please refer them. Section 2D and section 2H. 2C, 2D, 2H. Sorry, I forgot C. 2C, section 2C, section 2D, section 2H. This is with respect to provisions. Now, what is the impact of RTI? All your good governance principles: accountability, transparency, efficiency, effectiveness, citizen-centric, responsive. Now, don't you think RTI will also have a financial impact with respect to maintaining of fiscal prudence, with respect to optimization of resources? Yes or no? Because when there is corruption or when there is pilferage of resources, automatically your RTI is filed. Then you bring in where do you spend so much money? So it is going to result a kind of, or it is going to try to imbibe this fiscal prudence into administrative mechanism. Apart from imbibing your fiscal prudence into administrative mechanism, it is also going to imbibe the principles of optimization of resources. Principles of optimization of resources. Is this clear? That is the impact of RTI. Now, what are the issues with respect to RTI?
When it talks about section 2, is it government funding or public funding?
Public is government.
Public, it also involves normal public.
No. The word public in any system or in any economy means government. A government is nothing but people. So we don't refer to people, but we refer to government.
Government is nothing but people, but we don't refer to people.
Yes, that is what it is. What are the issues with respect to your RTI?
Discussion of the appointment of CIC.
See, first, you're supposed to see the structural issues. Structural issues. That is with respect to your Central Information Commission, State Information Commission. As after your RTI Amendment 2019, it is no more not independent. It do not have functional autonomy. First thing. Then it has lot of vacancies. It has lot of vacancies. It has lot of pending applications. Roughly around 2.5 lakh. 2.5 lakh pending applications. Independency is an issue, vacancy is an issue, pending issues or pending applications. Apart from the structural issues, we also have the issue with respect to awareness. Awareness at the level of public authorities and awareness at the level of people. Awareness at the level of public authorities and awareness at the level of people. Now, when you look at the awareness at the level of public authorities, I told you less than 10% of the people are aware about the total clauses or section 4 with respect to suo motu declaration. Okay. And with respect to people, they are not aware of the provisions of RTI. How many of us know the provision of section 4? What do you know?
Except UPSC aspirants.
Hardly.
UPSC aspirants and the government.
Hardly. Exam point of view, that's it. Now, section 2H basically talks about compensation for delay in processing of RTI application or fines that are to be imposed on the public authorities when there is delay that is caused for application of or processing of RTI application. Yes. So there is lack of awareness. Misuse. Then another issue with respect to RTI is the management system. Basically, they do not have recording, or they have very weak recording or monitoring system. They have very weak recording or monitoring system. Now that also causes an issue, because if you want to trace back the history of certain applications, and if you want to trace back, or if you want to look into the progress of certain applications, then it is going to be an issue to you. Yes? Yes, sir. Then I have already discussed the ambiguity with respect to the definition of public bodies or public authorities, or substantial funding. What do you basically mean by substantial funding? So these are certain issues of.
Second is the use of technology by the CSAs, because most of the states do not have e-RTA, wherein you can file.
Yeah, that's what I meant by record management systems. Weak record management system. Now, when you use your technology, automatically your record management systems become very efficient. So it is record management system or weak record management system, because there is a kind of technology fatigue that is set into the management of RTL. Now, what is the way forward? Now, with respect to way forward, you need to look into the structural revamping of Central Information Commission, State Information Commission, bringing in the clauses of independence, financial autonomy, filling up the vacancies, and faster clearance of the pending applications, or time-bound clearance of pending applications. Then with respect to awareness, you can undertake certain campaigns. Then with respect to public authorities, awareness, you can talk about mid-course training. There is something called as mid-course training. Mid-course training. Mid-course training.
How about creating an index for articles?
We have an
democracy.
index. We have an RTI index. I don't remember the rank. I think it is 163 or something. Or something. Just a second. I'll check. No, we are 6th position in global RTI ratings. I think previously we were, second, I think. Now we have slipped to 6.
After
Yes.
the amendment of the
No, this was in 2018 only.
I think we would further degrade.
Sir, installation of Jan Suchna portals, which Rajasthan has.
Jan Suchna portal is a way forward. Jan Suchna portal is a way forward. We'll talk about Rajasthan model of your right to information. That is your Jan Suchna portal. Right? Jan Suchna portal. So with respect to the awareness of public authorities, basically you need mid-course training. And you need to make them aware that, my dear, there is some clause called section 4, which basically looks into the suo motu declarations. Then, one inherent issue with respect to this RTI applications is, now you have RTI activists. What is their purpose? File RTI, get information,
Disclose it in the public.
disclose it in the public, or ensuring that particular wing of government accountable. Now here what happens is, there is no protection to the official who has released the information as part of RTI. I mean, there is no protection with respect to the officer who has released the information, and also there is no protection with respect to the person who has filed the RTI.
Recently there was an amendment.
Huh?
Recently there was an amendment, right? Previously RT filing was anonymous. Now they made it mandatory to file the name also.
Nothing like that.
Like there was in the recent news selection.
I don't think so.
So there is a declaration wherein we have to give our name. Every information has to be given.
Recently there was an amendment actually regarding the scam.
I don't know. At least I am not aware.
There was an issue like with his daughter. Both are working in the same institution, like his father and daughter, and she availed the benefits by his father actually. He anonymously filed the application and he got some details and he made her daughter avail the resources. So there was some issue involved in it. So they added this the standards of name and address.
Acha. I am not aware.
I think it's about the reason why you are
Applying. Acha.
Applying.
Acha.
I think it's
Acha.
in the presidential Rashtrapati.
Okay.
Is there any malified intention?
Intentions. Okay, the intent behind filing RTI.
RTI.
Okay. So one issue with respect to the unhindered declaration of information is that they do not have protection. So as a measure for robust functioning of RTI in ensuring accountability is basically providing a sense of security to the officers as well as a sense of security to the people who are filing it. Yes, and one measure is imbibe technology into record management systems or integrated record management systems. Integrated record unless if they have certain malified intentions with respect to their governance mechanism, then that can be exposed through your RTI. For example, your Adarsh scam, most of your scams were through RTI. Right? So this is all about RTI. If you know this much, this is more than sufficient. If you know this much, it is more than sufficient. Now if you want to conclude an answer on RTI, you can simply state your second ARC considers RTI as a key to the good governance. Now when you refer your second ARC report on RTI, the tagline for RTI is a key to good governance. So you can safely conclude by the second ARC considers RTI as a key to good governance. Is it clear? What time does your lunch start? 1? It's 12:35. Now if I start Citizen Charter, it will extend. We'll come back early. We can start?
We can start with 1:30.
Because if we start Citizen Charter, it will take 45 minutes. Because we have to discuss what do you basically mean by Citizen Charter? What is the basis for Citizen Charter? What are the issues with Citizen Charter and what is the way forward? And what is Sevottam model of governance or Citizen Charter? Shall we break?
Complete this citizen charter and then go for break if possible. You have no problem.
1:30.
It will become little late, I think.
Till 1:30. You take it till 1:30.
It'll extend around 45 minutes at least. 40-45 minutes.
Wow.
It's 2:30.
No, it should not happen that you extend that side also, because I have to leave by 4:30. I have a train at around 6:30 which have to be boarded. I think it's better we start early session. Then without break we'll continue that afternoon and we'll finish. Because there we are supposed to deal with citizen charter, social audit, SHGs and role of NGOs. I'll just give you a brief idea. Because, and you please remember, with respect to role of NGO, it is acting as a bridge. And everything will revolve around it only. Civil services. Right? So I think 2.5 hours must be sufficient for these 4 topics, whatever I told, and give little brief about NGOs and civil services. Right?